Hey, what are you looking at, stupid? Yeah, I'm talking to you. I bet you don't even know what evolution is, do you? Knew it. Pathetic, really. I mean, someone as amazing as me just knows this out on a whim. I guess if anyone's gonna teach you, it better be good old Moist Critical here. Alright, well, let's get this started. So, when I realized how good evolution was, I went, woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I was waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo! Okay, I was just about to go on a giant tangent to teach you all this stuff, but I found some people that have the same issue as you. Look.
Evolution. Evolution. What is evolution? Is this an evolution? Wait a minute. I have to try something. Did I just evolve? I think I have. I'm a turtle. This is great. Whee! Water, so fun. Oh, yes. Ah, the life of a turtle. Wait. How do I get back? All this and more on In the Field. Okay, so animals apparently change with generations.
What are you talking about, dude? Gen Alpha started years ago and I still look the same.
I don't know, man. I just read it from CoolDarwinGuy.com.
I wouldn't trust it, dude. It seems like a dark web, shady website.
Okay, that's what I thought too, but then I thought about it. Like, Pokemon change their appearances all the time, and some even change with different generations.
You mean like Alolan Pokemon?
Yes, exactly. Like Alolan Raticate, Dark type. When did that happen? You know, like if Pokemon can change with their generations, why can't animals?
Oh, I see now. So you think they work like Saiyans from Dragon Ball, going through the different Saiyan evolutions?
I mean, maybe. I don't really see any like Super Saiyan dogs around though.
Dude, have you ever heard of wolves?
Holy shit.
Look, these guys have no idea what they're talking about. It's horrible. Like, genuinely horrible. I think I could learn more from an interview with a monkey that can only respond pressing buttons. I'd be like, oh, how are you doing, Monculius Jr.?
Give me eat orange.
Anyways, I found someone else that I think knows what they're talking about.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see you're all here for another lesson of biology. So today, our main focus will shift from the general conception of the nucleus to evolution. And yes, all of the nerdy science things you're going to hear me say are trustworthy because I'm wearing business casual attire and glasses. Now, let's get started. To start things off, we're going to need to look at Charles Darwin. Now, this guy was interesting, to say the least. He loved Charles Lyell. He was one of his biggest influences in his studies. Lyell studied the progression of the geography, or shape of the land, of Earth, and he found that it has undergone so many changes in its past. These discoveries are also what led to Pangaea, the universal continent, being discovered. Using what Lyell had figured out at this time already, Darwin set out on an adventure of his own, across a bagel. Wait, no, that's not right. Oh, sorry, yeah, the beagle. No, not that type of okay, whatever. Anyway, Charles Darwin was one of the most scientifically minded people out there at this time, and that led to a lot of his discoveries actually being discovered. For example, when he finally sailed across the Atlantic on the Beagle and went to the Galapagos Islands, he discovered Darwin's finches. Well named, I know. But there was something really strange about these finches. Some of their beaks looked different than the others, and their wings were shaped differently too. But why? Well, when Darwin decided to look into their hunting patterns, he found out that some of them hunted on the ground for their prey and some of them hunted up in trees. But their beaks were shaped differently, but those beaks helped them hunt better in those areas. So Darwin came to the realization that despite all of these guys being finches, they all had different traits that helped them adapt to their surroundings better. Well, if they're all finches though, they must have a common ancestor. This realization led to his theory of natural selection.
Alright, like I said, that was better. It was actually educational. I learned some stuff when I wasn't sleeping. It was so boring. I guess only one person can actually do all that, and that is good old Charlie. So, here we go. That dude was so boring, I didn't even let him fully talk about natural selection. There are 4 main principles that go into making it work, and they're all very important, so write them down. The first one is that an animal or organism can reproduce, and then that organism that got reproduced can also reproduce. So let's say you have a mom and a dad cow that make a baby cow. That baby cow can grow up and then have a kid as well. That is the first principle of natural selection. The second one, for example, is if the mom had spotted fur and the dad had the same color fur throughout. That baby could then have spotted fur or the same color fur. This allows for genetic diversity, and that's the second main principle of natural selection. The third principle of natural selection delves into the environment and the limited resources that exist there. If there are limited resources like sunlight and grass and things of that nature for the cow to gain energy from, whether eating or drinking or keeping the sunlight on them so they can stay awake, then there is the third principle of natural selection available. The fourth delves into whether or not that organism is capable of keeping all of those limited resources for themselves. Can they compete with other organisms like other cows or deer for that grass, for that water, for that sunlight? And if that's the case, that cow can then reproduce more and have more children that will then also be able to provide for themselves using the traits that that cow had. These are the 4 main principles of natural selection. Oh my gosh, that took so long. But finally, you guys know what the 4 properties of natural selection are. But they're only used in the wild, and this is why. Natural selection is natural. That means it's only happening in the natural conditions an organism is put in. So let's say we have a red fox. That red fox is going to have its certain specific genes because it helps it adapt to its conditions. Because it has furry hair, it's able to survive in the winter, stuff like that. However, there's a difference when humans and climate change those conditions. This is called artificial selection. That means that humans will come in and say, oh, I want this to happen. And so animals will reproduce given those conditions. Alright, I think we can all stop talking about natural and artificial selection. I think we have that all cleared up, right? Are we good on that? Please say we're good on that. I was spending so much time on that. Anyway, they're only able to happen for one main factor: reproduction. If an animal can't reproduce, it dies. If an organism can't reproduce, their species dies. So, what even is reproduction and how is it done? Well, reproduction is only done 2 ways: sexually and asexually. Asexual reproduction is only done with one parent, where it's able to create offspring on its own. Sexual reproduction is, it's a bit different. In all realness though, when reproduction happens between a male and a female, the male sperm and the female's egg combine and create a zygote. This zygote is genetically diverse because half of the DNA is coming from the male and half of the DNA is coming from the female, and so this then creates an entirely unique specimen. However, in asexual reproduction, you're basically just cloning whatever organism had the child. Cells undergo the same type of reproduction. Some cells undergo mitosis, which is similar to asexual reproduction, where a cell just sort of splits into 2 identical parts, but then meiosis is also done by some other cells, and this is done to create 2 genetically different cells. Unfortunately, natural selection doesn't end like that, because sometimes an organism is unable to create offspring. This is called reproductive isolation. Reproductive isolation is when an organism is unable to reproduce with another organism for whatever reason. Now, this is just like an umbrella term that other things fit into. For example, behavioral isolation is like when a bird has a mating call. That mating call is only meant for that same species of bird. So if a wolf hears it, they're not going to start going feral and want to mate with that bird, It's only meant for that same species of bird. That's behavioral isolation. Then there's also biochemical isolation. This is when 2 organisms cannot reproduce because their sex organs don't act compatibly. Let's say we have a male and a female wolf. They have correct sex organs that allow them to reproduce and create offspring. Now, if we had a fox and a lizard trying to mate, they would not be able to because their sex organs are not compatible. This also has to do with hybrids. Hybrids oftentimes, like mules, are not able to reproduce. This is because they are infertile at birth. Most hybrids are, and this is unfortunate because it allows for less genetic diversity and new species to be invented. Now, there's also temporal isolation. Temporal isolation is when different animals reproduce at different times of the year. For example, some birds reproduce in the spring, but some mammals reproduce in the fall. And that means that they are incompatible and they are isolated from each other. That is temporal isolation. Alright, I think that covers it all. Hopefully you all understand a bit more how evolution works so you aren't a little stupid guy like when you first stared at me awkwardly. That's about it. See ya. Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba, ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba, ba-ba, ba-ba.